Yo, what's cracking everyone? Ericship 111 here. So the time has come for me to give you my very honest first impressions of the upcoming brand new Forza Motorsport, which does officially launch on PC and the Xbox Series consoles on October 5th if you have purchased the Premium Edition, or October 10th if you have just bought the Deluxe or Standard Edition, and will also be available on Game Pass as well. Now, just to inform you all that what I got to play was an Xbox Series X preview of Forza Motorsport, and it basically included the game's introduction in its entirety, featuring two initial driving experiences. First with the 2024 Chevrolet Corvette E-Ray around Maple Valley, as well as racing through the penultimate laps of an endurance race in a Cadillac Racing V Series R, and then of course we get our very first taste of a 3-race Builders Cup series with the option of selecting a 2018 Honda Civic Type R, 2019 Subaru STI S209, or a 2018 Ford Mustang GT, all of which will be in the final game once it launches. So the first and most important thing I want to give you my impressions on are the physics. Now, to truly feel and understand how the cars behaved in this game, I turned most of the assists off except for ABS, and I'll get to that a little bit later as to why. No braking lines, just pretty much me driving completely raw and learning and also relearning the tracks as I go. So my very initial thought when driving the E-Ray in the initial drive was, my goodness, this is completely foreign to me. More so because I hadn't played Forza Motorsport 7 in quite some time, and generally speaking, I'm not the biggest fan of driving supercars around a track, especially in a new game because of their low downforce and the margin for error in terms of when to brake. I'm usually overshooting them, and because you only get to do this initial drive once, I was mainly just focused on trying to stay on track. But with that said, this particular initial drive was specifically designed for this purpose and to give players an opportunity just to see and feel how Forza Motorsport is. It's only until the second initial drive with the Cadillac V Series R where I started to understand the game's physics and handling model. I felt as though the car had a genuine weight to it while turning, not in a sense where it felt too heavy or even too light like Forza Motorsport 7, where cars could sometimes start understeering, which in turn could quickly transition into a quick power drift. No, with the new Forza Motorsport, I was impressed to actually see how planted the cars actually are around corners, but where I really got to understand all of this the most was the introduction of the Builders Cup. So I played through the entire series 3 times, each with the Civic Type R, the STI S209, and the Mustang GT. Now, all of these vehicles have a different drivetrain layout, so I got to experience how different each car drove, and along with what I mentioned earlier, these 3 cars genuinely felt different to drive. I can feel the lightweight handling of the Civic Type R around corners, allowing me to brake later while still being mindful that it still has its limitation being front wheel drive. I can feel the STI's advantages of being all wheel drive and how it may not be able to brake as late as the Type R, nor necessarily be able to turn in as well, but I can put my foot down out of the corner much earlier, and I know just how heavy the Mustang GT is, and I can feel the weight of the car being transferred every single time, whether I'm accelerating, braking, and even turning. It's hard to explain, but the nuances of each vehicle, whether they're minute or glaringly obvious, are all translated, and I honestly can't wait to see how other cars in their respective classes compare, just to see if I can really feel the different characteristics and personalities of each vehicle. Now remember, Turn 10 spent around 7 years building an entirely new physics and car handling model, and I gotta admit, especially going back to Forza Motorsport 7, even though some cars weren't exactly the same, it's a major improvement. How you drive also affects the way the car behaves quite drastically, and because this new physics model in Motorsport feels a lot more consistent than it ever has, every mistake you make on track is on you. Now, one thing I wasn't a fan of was how easily you could lock up your brakes without ABS. In previous motorsport titles, I didn't drive with any ABS simply because I was able to judge when to press and release the brake right before it locked up. But in the new motorsport, I felt like I was locking up very easily, even at around 50% pressure. Now, I'm not sure if this is part of the new physics model, the increase in tire contact, or whatever it may be, but for those who don't normally drive with ABS, may find braking a little more difficult this time round. Also, for the new motorsport, there are no more assist advantages. One of the biggest ones that have plagued this franchise over the years was using manual with clutch, where players would power shift through the gears, yielding much quicker shift times, especially in slower production cars. But that is all now gone. So overall, with the physics and handling model, at this very moment, based on the preview, I am impressed. I just hope that across all of the cars in motorsport, they all feature the same amount of fidelity and feel unique by highlighting their individual characteristics and behavior. Alright, next up, I want to talk about the Builders Cup structure and the car leveling up system, something that has been quite controversial, but we'll get there. So there are 3 race events in the introduction Builders Cup series, one for Grand Oak, one for Mugello, and one for Kyalami. And in each of these race events, there are 2 sessions. There is a practice session, and of course, you have the featured race. I believe once you actually go into the proper Builders Cup series, there will be a qualifying session too. Now, with the practice session, before you actually head out on track, you can actually adjust how much fuel you want in your car and choose what tire compound you want to use. Sadly, for the intro Builders Cup, you can't change the compound of your tire, but you can decide how much fuel you want, and it will also show you an estimated lap time of your car on that track with that amount of specific fuel in it. Now, once you head out to practice, you are required to do at least 3 laps before you move on to the featured race. Now, for me, part of the reason why I was able to understand each car and the motorsport physics so well was because even after 3 laps, I found myself continuously doing laps all the way until the 10-minute time limit reached, and this was due to several different factors. The first was just simply trying to get each of my lap times as fast as possible, and with the weight of the car becoming lighter per lap as fuel is burning, as well as tires heating up for maximum grip, and the track rubbering more and more. I probably should have added that in the physics and handling part of the video, but yeah, the grip level from both the track and tires do change, and it is very noticeable. But anyways, it's pretty addictive, especially when you see your lap times getting faster. What I also like is around the track, every corner you take, you can see a segment score out of 10 on the top right. So for example, if you take a corner and go off track, that is immediately a 1 out of 10, but take the perfect line and you'll score a 10. Now, these segment scores are given in 0.1 increments, and anytime you score an 8 or above, you will be rewarded with car XP, which is what is needed for you to level up your vehicle. And this system, to me, showing how I went around a corner and rewarding me with good driving, makes so much more sense than Forza Motorsport 7, where every corner you take, it'll just tell you you've done a good turn or perfect turn. It didn't really serve any real purpose, but here in the new motorsport, it does. You'll also be rewarded with bonus car XP again every time you hit a personal best segment score, as well as completing the targeted lap time set by the game. And also, throughout each track during these practice sessions, there are these certain time sectors where you can see whether or not you are faster or slower than your fastest time. The one big problem I encountered here, and actually got me quite annoyed at times, was since you are sharing the track with all the other drivers, eventually you will meet with some of them on track, and at times they just get completely in your way. Even if you have the corner, they will still turn into you, preventing you from getting a good segment score or even a faster lap time. With that said though, we were informed by Chris Sasaki, the creative director for Turn 10, that this particular preview of Forza Motorsport was an older build, and the release version will have drivatars and AIs updated so that this doesn't happen. Which then leads me to the featured race, which I must admit, after doing a full practice session, made me much more confident in actually racing around the track. Again, much like practice, you can set your fuel load before a race, but because these introductory races had no mandatory pit stops and were quite short, I just set my fuel amount to 5 laps instead of the default, which I believe was around 12 laps. Before the race, you can actually see all of your opponents with their best lap time that they set during practice, their tyre compounds, and also how much fuel they're carrying. Now, in terms of the actual race, there's not really that much to talk about other than car XP can now also be gained from overtaking other drivers. You can challenge the grid, which means you can start at any position you desire in the featured race, and depending on where you start, the difficulty and rule set you have applied, if you reach your projected finish, you will earn extra credits. I set my rule set to expert, meaning simulated damage, tire wear and fuel, no rewind and full penalties. And even with the clunky AI occasionally causing minor collisions, I never received any penalties. It's only if I cut the track and gain an advantage is when penalties do get given out. But other than that, that's pretty much how each event with the Builders Cup work. But now let's talk about the car leveling up system. So there's two different vehicle currencies, car points and car XP. Car XP is what is used to level up your car, and car points is the currency used to upgrade your car parts. As I mentioned earlier, car XP is gained from driving well around the track, while car points are given every time you level up your car from accumulating car XP. And each time you level up your car, depending on the vehicle, a certain upgrade becomes available. Each car has a maximum level of 50, and if you're wondering how long it takes to level up a car to its max, I didn't try it. But after one Builders Cup, I managed to get a car to around level 20, which took around an hour. So taking that into consideration, I would assume each car would take anywhere between 2 to 3 hours, which to me is just far too long. Forza as a franchise, as much as they want to keep pushing this idea of car building, it's still about collecting cars and being able to experience as many different cars that everyone, from your most hardcore dedicated players all the way to the casual ones. I mean, that's why all of these options like assisted braking and assisted steering is all included in the game. This new Forza Motorsport, it still caters for everybody, and unfortunately a model like this of locking upgrades to such a high degree through car leveling just goes entirely against who the target audience is. For example, with the STI S209, to unlock the body kit conversion, you need to reach level 45. Now, if this game is truly about car building, then I better see more customizations available for this car that hasn't appeared in Forza Horizon 5. I would want to see visual upgrades that are completely new to Forza, because if it's the same as to what's available in Forza Horizon 5, then Motorsport isn't really truly about car building, is it? I don't want to rant on too much about this. I might make a separate video talking about this directly. There are solutions. I mean, the idea itself isn't actually that bad, but perhaps it just needs refining, and with Forza's official suggestion hub showing to be very useful in Forza Horizon 5, maybe once Forza Motorsport launches where everyone gets the chance to experience this, perhaps some amendments can be discussed. But apart from the car leveling and upgrading system, I do like how the Builders Cup events are structured. Now let's move on to graphics and car sounds. Visually speaking, in terms of each track and the details, I believe this is the most realistic looking Forza Motorsport to date. You don't see any of the overly saturated or vibrant colors that were so prominent back in Motorsport 7. It seems like Turn 10 really went with a realistic color palette scheme. In terms of the car models, with the cars that were showcased in the preview, I think they look pretty much as they should. These cars are from the laser scanned era, so what you see in Horizon 5, you will see it here too. Now keep in mind, all of the gameplay that you see in today's video is all under the performance graphical preset, where it prioritizes 60 frames per second at 4K. I didn't go for the performance RT, where on-track race tracing is enabled at 60 frames per second, but at variable resolutions, or the visuals option, where ray tracing on track is enabled all in 4K but at 30 frames per second. So realistically, the game could look even better than what I'm showcasing in today's video, but of course, everybody probably would want to know about the recycled car models. I have yet to see one in the game that I can actually analyze and investigate. I am aware of the Mitsubishi Evo 6 driving around Catalunya in one of their track reveal trailers, and I will say that video does not do the new Motorsport any favors whatsoever. I'm sure once the actual game releases, I'll go much deeper into those cars for sure, but based off from this current preview, and should this be an indication of how the other tracks will actually look, as well as majority of the newer cars that were introduced from Forza Motorsport 5 onwards, then yeah, the new Forza Motorsport does look pretty good. Now, when it comes to car sounds, environmental noise, reverberating the exhaust notes, tire screeches, big major improvement here. It's honestly not even comparable. The car sounds in the new Motorsport truly sounds like cars, and I can also hear the subtle amplifications and echoes through the racetrack, which I never would have expected. I went back to Forza Horizon 5 just to hear the same car, and I have to say, the car sounds in Horizon 5, they just sound terrible in comparison to the new Motorsport, but that's just how good they are. Tire screeches also sound better too, and overall, at least in the preview build and with the cars that were being showcased, the noise just sounds so much more in depth. Other new features such as changing your field of view can be done in cockpit and third person as well, which is quite nice. The steering wheel animation has vastly improved from Motorsport 7. It's nowhere near as stiff as it used to be, and it turns to 180 degrees now as opposed to 90 degrees on each side. Without dragging the video on too long, my first impressions overall with the Forza Motorsport preview. I love the driving, I love how the cars handle, I love the car sounds, and how the game looks from its user interface all the way to the tracks and its details. I was honestly wishing that there was more to this preview that I could play, especially the Builders Cup mode with different rules and regulations. It's been a while since I've actually been quite eager to progress through a campaign in a Forza Motorsport game, and apart from the car leveling up and car building portion, which again, as I mentioned, isn't necessarily a bad idea, it just needs some reworking, I'm genuinely looking forward to the release date of this game. Now, please make sure to subscribe for more Forza Motorsport content. If there's any questions you want to ask about the game, write them down in the comment section below, and I'll try to answer all of your questions as best to my ability. And please make sure to smash the thumbs up button, as it really does help me out, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.